his match. Towards me with a smile, a sleeping bag under one arm, a bag of tent on the other. Surely not, I murmured, dumbfounded. The friends of the park always knew I was there. Took my tent, because no one's seen you for many weeks. Surely not, I murmured, retrospective. Not when such a good ghost. Not when I had totemic crawl marks on my palms, on my knees. Emblematic of a concern I did not want my hiding to raise. He put the tent back up. For as long as you need, cleaned, dried, aired, bedded with a mattress and the sleeping bag replacement for the ones I use, damp, cold, rancid. You don't do drugs. Had not been a problem. I still crawl. I still wait until the park is empty, still as quiet, still no light. This time, for fear of being kicked in the head for fun. He cuts an astute image of 1,000, selfless, generous, benignities I had thought all dead. And it's interspersed with generosities of passing strangers, reminding it's the little acts of kindness often that can make a great difference when we care to notice others. I'm going to end with a poem of my own, I can find it. Arkbound are also going to be publishing a book of mine, which is, it was called Before Unrendered Invisible. The piece is called Requiem for Our Times, Killing Me Softly. It's about the premature death of a Black brother brought to my attention by a member of family. I didn't know them. It was a chance encounter in Seed Cafe back in 2004, and remarked his death was, and represents all those disproportionately dying in mental health facilities, police custody, asylum, detention centres before their time. Black and brown lives without justice. His name, Vernon Hawthorne. And I created a voice in the cemetery. I don't need a camera, microphone, 6 o'clock news bulletin, nor local news headline. Without glare, with no formality, I go softly, gently into the night. In this place of safety, I voluntarily stepped inside. Being out there on my own scares me. Will you sit with me, hold my hand, let me cry throughout the night? Those voices that come at me, they scare me all right. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so needy, disquieting you with my distress. And look at you, loads to do, not enough staff on again. It's not right, thank you, doctor. I'll take them, these tablets. New ones, you say, they will keep the voices at bay. You don't want to risk my distress. You're the one that knows best. Thank you very much for thinking about me, the ever wide doors. You keep them away, my family. They're part of the problem, you see. Only you just go check your files and remind me who I am. It's all written down there. So please tell me who I am. This madness, it terrorizes me, inside, outside my head, morning, noon, night. Why, I can see me in your eyes, an axe wielding madman. I'll never cut anyone. Just me. I shouldn't upset myself no more. How right you are, doctor, saving me from me. So kind of you to understand. You do think of me. Ooh, soft, woozy, dreamy. This blanket that's coming at me. Yes, this treatment plan is the best thing for me. Only a little stomach upset and diarrhea. I make myself a cup of tea. Then I fall asleep. Such a deep and comforting sleep. A sea of safety coming at me. Ooh, the best that's ever been. No need to check up upon me in this place of safety. To the next of kin, we regret to inform you Vernon Hawthorne died in his sleep from natural causes. Rest assured, he passed away ever so gently. He wouldn't have felt a peep. Is there anything we can do to help? If it was an ordinary admissions ward in a general hospital, say, a little murmuring might go astray. A bed that lies empty, sitting relatives or others might inquire, what happened to him? Quite that heart attack. I'm sorry, he looked so very well. In this place of safety, one voluntary step inside. There's no need for a camera, microphone, 6 o'clock news bulletin, nor local news headline. Without glare, with no formality, so softly, so gently, so unobtrusively, I go into the night. Rest in peace, Hawthorne. I'm David Onamade. Rox?
Thank you for that. It was wonderful. It really was.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was incredible. So I think now we're going to Roxana. If you would like to read some poems of David.
I was thinking weirdly that I believe someone else is reading Summer, and I thought it might be better to read that first. I'm reading Autumn and Winter, so
yeah, I can.
It's like a story he's telling, and the story begins with Summer.
It's narrative, isn't it? Yeah, I'll read Summer actually. I was hoping to do so. Yes.
Cool.
So I'll read that now. So yeah, for those who don't know who I am, I'm Jonathon, and I work for Arkbound, and David for me definitely been a big inspiration as also a poet as well. I found his stuff extremely captivating and moving, and even though I never met him personally, like his work has definitely been a huge inspiration and it definitely is one of Arkbound's more enigmatic and brilliant writers, and we've had a lot of brilliant writers come through here, so it's an honor for me to be a part of this, really. But yeah, I'll read this poem now of Summer. I sit on a dead bark under a shade that living trees provide. I'm wandering around the luminescence of time, about the live that is the dead bark lived. I'm wondering about what makes the now time for living to reign, about why heat brings happiness to so many. It is a happiness I do not share, not with my pain, not with a life that has left me here to rot, like the dead bark.
I'll just continue.
Thank you.
Autumn. I'm still sitting on the dead bark. The storm is gathering. The weather scheming, a different harshness, to remind those who have forgotten that this is still Britain. How I wish I could be a fly on the wall, to listen to the weather, laugh its bellicose rhapsodic spill, to mock those who think they know why it blows hot and cold. The days are shorter now, the mornings chillier, misty enough to make starlings stir. My haigi verdures too, where my tent nestles, homily at the feet of a thicket of rhododendrons, now a coat of many colours. A bog peat the rains has stirred into a pot of various smells. It simmers slowly. In Gehenna at last, living a misery I cannot shake. Winter that is around the corner, creeping, creeping, to deal me a harsher hand. The beginning of winter. It is October. The rains, winds, and cold are angrier than usual. They pour, they blow, they bite. The spite they have stewed. The floor of my tent is wet, though it does its best to stifle the smouldering peat bog under the blankets, plastic sheeting, cardboards, and sleeping bag. The peat bog that releases slow, sticky, stringy streaks of dampness, there, but not there. A simmering dampness that is stirred worse by the condensation that hangs on the tent like a lateral bat. The water droplets, cold, wet, and heavy. They burst like ice stalactites. It is October. The rains, winds, and cold are angrier than usual. They pour, they blow, they bite. So that is David's extraordinary observations from his position outside of society. The personal relationship that he has with his situation, I think, is so striking. It's as though the weather itself is something that dislikes him, reflected through his unhappiness. It's very uncomfortable to think of such an amazing man in that situation. I knew him quite well, and he was always a man with a plan, and he was so much more mature than we were during that era. He had vision, he had aspiration, he had talent, he was very kind and generous. And it seems absurd that there was no place for him in our society. I have to admit that I found myself in a very similar situation to David a few years ago. And through the efforts of friends, I was able to have a fresh start. And I know that David was eventually lifted out of his situation so that he could find some rest and some peace during his last days, which is some comfort. I think it's very unfortunate that so many of us didn't know of his situation, not least of all because he was not a man you would have ever imagined in that situation. He was very much more together than most of us were. And that in itself is a lesson that we're all ultimately vulnerable to this kind of plight extremely easily. And to not have an awareness of people who are falling through the system is a folly in itself. Because so many of us may face those situations in a lifetime. So his work was an act of great courage, something that I think very few of us could have achieved in that situation. And it lives beyond him as a reminder and a legacy of the quality of man that he was. So it's a privilege to be joining with people, both to remember him and to spend time with his work. I don't know who's speaking next, but I'm all ears.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Again, I didn't know him well at all, but to hear all these stories of different people who did know him, honestly, I wish I had met him because he seems like such an incredible human being and just a massive inspiration to anyone of like my skin color who's trying to make it in such a cruel world sometimes, trying to make it as a poet, trying to make it as, like despite all the challenges that we face constantly. And honestly, it is a devastating sort of end that he had, but it's quite beautiful how he gave us such hauntingly beautiful poetry going through all of this. But yeah, our next person speaking is Rob Mitchell.
Hi, Rob.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for. Hello.
Yeah, so whenever you're ready, I'll leave you to it.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Ros and Roxana, and thanks also Arkbound for doing this as well. Definitely. I'm going to start with the piece that I've been given to read from David, and then I'll say afterwards a little bit about how I knew him. That's all right. So the piece is called Regret, and it's from 1998 Bristol Black Writers anthology, and it's by David Onamade. I'm a dirty old man, Mabel says. At 67, my mind still spreads its arms like wildfire, gathering, feeding on my thoughts of what people do behind their bedroom doors. This partially Uncle Glenn's fault, who used to wonder about goings on in every house on our street, while I prayed he'd shut up. I had my worries, like at 15, the smallness of my penis and a permanent erection that made it bow inside my always too tight briefs. Oh, the fear of failure on the lucky day. All these are memories. Memories like my first rented accommodation. A room with a bed that creaked so noisily that Father Weiss named the house a hooker's hellhole and avoided the place like the plague. At weekends, the place lived this image, as every bed but mine in the 4-bed terrace joined in a sing-along in a seeming contest with the deep throat moaning that made my life unbearable. Then came along Mabel with her old set ways. She did not only refuse to moan, sex had to be inside the duvet at all times, and to make sure no one heard us, my bed she oiled and respringed. All those are memories. Memories like my next accommodations, a bedsit, a flat, a marriage, and a 2-bed terrace that became a hovel after 2 sons and a daughter, and a better job and a house now too big. The children have left for their experiences. My only regret still wishes that Mabel had moaned, or at least let the bed creak her presence. So that's Regret by David Onamade. So yeah, it's been hard hearing what everyone said so far. I mean, that piece from back in the 90s is when, like, I think like us, a number of us here knew David Black Writers being a key, as Ros said, for being a platform to be able to write and gather and do stuff and find your voice, I guess, wasn't it? Not giving us ourselves permission to feel, write, express and share. And David was part of that. David also, as Roxana says, a man with a plan. That's for true. Always, always, always,
Yeah, always.
And, back in that day, the free news was one of his things, which was the initiative he set up back. But it wasn't like today, but it definitely wasn't like today. It was all social media. So actually setting up a print magazine, a news entity, that was definitely a dream and a vision of his. He always saw writing and felt writing at his core, absolute central writing expression. I think everything we've heard so far this evening, that definitely expresses that, no doubt. And I think that generosity and stuff that was spoken about earlier was also expressed through that, because the free news was a platform for other people to write again. And there was quite a few, I know I was one of many people who did bits of writing for the free news on a regular basis. And I think that's probably where I got to know David at the time. And it was, it's interesting. Okay, so Bath, I was actually working in Bath for the last few years, and I actually did see David in recent times. The first I knew that David's situation was awry was probably back when I first bumped him in Bristol, actually. And I knew he was living in somewhere recently. It was all makeshift kind of scenarios. And then I bumped into him in Bath. And I also knew he was living a makeshift scenario. But what I found really interesting was, now as I'm hearing, I'm thinking and knowing, I'm sure I could have done more, because I'm listening to the pieces. It's really, I was not aware of, how the situation was. I just knew it was awry. What was interesting, Dave never actually asked for anything but one thing. What it was, he asked if I would do him a favor. And yeah, so it was to record a piece of his writing. And we actually set up an appointment. We went to a studio in Bath, and we'd recorded this piece, writing, and and I think because he had a plan, he was going to do something with it. He was, publishing and all the rest of it. But while, I knew that he never actually kind of, hearing these pieces and the writing is a really interesting way into the soul in that experience, because I never really saw that. I didn't get that. He wasn't asking for any help in that direction. He asked for one thing, to record a piece of writing. And after knowing him all that time, that sense of, I think it's still the kind of the spirit you can really hear, I think, with the writing. There's definitely a thing when you get caught up with the system. I know his experience with what happened due to the state and identity and all that kind of stuff. And being homeless is one sense of being a non-person, which I think his writing completely refutes. And also, when you are stateless is another sense of being a non-person. Once again, I think as a writer, even from the grave, he's writing back and speaking to us quite clearly about that experiences. It's almost like, I think you said earlier, it's almost like for him, it was almost like a documentary. He had his writing, and this experience was good content. It almost feels like that. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, it's an experience and it's a suffering, but his spirit was at that level where, like I think Roxana summed it, a man with a plan. I think he always had this belief that something would come through, and I know he was always pushing, but I find it galling now to hear these works, especially as I knew him in these later times. So I want to give thanks for the opportunity to even say this, and to be a part of this event and this recollection on David's life.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I think next is Jamila. Jamila would like to talk about the library in the book.
Yeah, hi. Yes, that's me. Hi. Yeah, it's like everyone else. It's just shock and sadness to hear how David, ended up with his life being taken away from him in some ways. And anyway, I'm reading a couple of pieces of his words. I think were his medicine, were his savior, were the things that gave him hope, gave him, and the same thing, always with a plan. So I'm reading the book, and I'm going to read the library as well from his Sorrow, Tears and Blood. Okay, the book continues to save me, reading it, writing it. Lee Child, James Patterson, Clive Clussler, Zadie Smith, Georgia Simeon, Lindsay Sands, Eric Lustbader, Sam North, Uzma Jaluddin, Richard Brantigan, Andy Brown, Ruth Padell, Derek Walcott, Louise Adja Parker, Benjamin Zephaniah, Stephen Fry, HMP Houston, The Sojourning, Shadows in the Dark, The Children on Hipwits, The Vanishing of Ustadad, New Life, Sorrow, Tears and Blood, Aesthetics, Parks and Gardens of Bath, Black Voices in British Poetry, 1961. It soothes the voices in my head, voices like church bells that remind me of the things I have not forgotten, voices that unpick with relish the threads of every good I have finely knitted with metal, ruffle, anger, and my well-being. It takes me somewhere far away, worlds where what you see is what it is, no scheming, no discrimination. A world where there are no destined stations, like the coat you hang on the door. A passing that does not leave lifelong skids like pockmarks. The book continues to save me, reading it, writing it. And the next piece of David's is the library, homage to the library. Hats off to Ewart, Edwards and Botherton, the free library movement. Whoever coined the phrase public space. The library and all of its librarians were honest. The place a respite from the stark, cold reality the outside wears like skin. A place where those with nowhere else come. A place that is full of echoing voices, voices in stained, shut pages, as if to keep content, absolute, steadfast, current, relevant, timeless. Here I found home from home, a place where the deafening silence is a welcome music, the soil that grows creativity like spur, shoot. So beautiful. I know that David, hearing that he spent quite a lot of time in the libraries, like a lot of people who don't have places to go to stay warm during the day, it was his refuge. And for him, his words were his refuge. And for me, utmost respect for David. When he came to Bristol, I remember that force. He couldn't believe that we didn't have a community newspaper. He was determined. Free News came out of that determination. And he embraced anybody. He gave everybody a voice. He was just, yeah, fantastic. And have a lot of respect for him and for what he has achieved and done over the years, despite his circumstances. So my love to his family as well, and the great loss. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamila. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted actually to mention as well, which is something that I, just adds to his brilliance. Really, is that David's book was actually one of only 5 shortlisted for the Kavya Prize in Glasgow. The book is now like widely promoted in libraries and Waterstones branches all over Scotland. And
Wow.
and like judges noted at the time, they said, we were immersively moved by David's story and his powerful account of homelessness, with each poem striking a chord over ongoing social issues faced by disadvantaged people across the country. And I think that really shows just how hard-hitting and personal his words were. And yeah, just an incredible man, really. So yes, I think we're moving on to the next person, who's not sure if Ian Duhigg's here. Ros, do you know about Ian?
Max, did Max want to say something? Max, Farah, are you from Max Farah?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Max.
Hi, yes.
I'm trying to remember where you're from. Are you from the David Onamade?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an intruder, really. Is this the time for me to say kind of how I've ended up in this room?
I don't know if there's anyone else that want to share memories that knew David
I'm not a
personally.
friend. I'm
First,
tangential
but
to this. So
I think the link is still important and relevant, but I don't know if there's anyone else that want to share anything with memories of David and Jonathan. Is anyone signaling in?
Yeah, is anyone else who wants to share a message if I know David personally or wants to read any poem from David, then yeah, now would be a good time. But yeah.
Yeah, I can I was the last person actually to meet David through our Foundation. But if Max goes first, it would be better, if we get Max going first, and then I can sort of say a few things about how Arkbound Foundation actually got in touch with him and how we provided the accommodation for him and got him in having a job. Yeah, thank you.
okay, well, I'll be very brief. I mean, I live in Leeds, and I sort of came into your company through. I'm not quite sure how I acquired a copy of the beautiful book that Arkbound published of David's poems. I can't quite remember how it sort of reached me, but I got the book and read them, and it resonated so strongly with a case that I'm a sort of carrier of a case of a Nigerian man called David Olawale, who came to Leeds in 1949 and was caused to die by 2 Leeds policemen in 1969. And so the parallel with your David is that Olawale became homeless and a rough sleeper for a very long time, for probably the last 8 years of his life, largely. So that obviously made me think of the connections between David Olawale and David Onamade. But the other connection, the connection really sort of ends there, apart from these being 2 African men who died too young in Britain, at least partly because in David Olawale's case, he was homeless and hounded by 2 Leeds policemen in the last 2 years of his life, but he'd had a very tough life all the way through. Whereas what's interesting to me, well, one of the many interesting things about David Onamade is that he clearly did well for a long time and did so much for so many other people. So I don't know the story intimately, so I don't know how he fell in such hard times. And obviously I feel very, very sympathetic to that fall. And I noticed that Roxana said, it is an example to us all of how vulnerable everybody can be, and how this transition from a relatively okay life into an abject kind of life is it's something that's hard to comprehend, but is an important reminder for us all. But I'll just conclude by saying that the work that I am a part of a charity called the David Olawale Memorial Association, which has been campaigning for the last 10 or 12 years to have a memorial we started in 2008 actually, but we're campaigning to have a memorial garden with a sculpture in memory of David Olawale in order to provoke a conversation in Leeds and elsewhere about this very issue of vulnerability, but in David Olawale's case, about the intersection of racism, his skin color and the racism that provoked among some people in Leeds, and his mental ill health and his homelessness. So we're looking to have a broader and wider conversation in the city of Leeds, but also across the nation, really, about these intersections. And the idea of the Memorial Garden is that it's a very special place of jubilation and celebration and creativity, so that we try and flip the narrative from abjection to hope. And we have the support here of another fantastically important British Nigerian, namely Yinka Shonibari, who, as some of you will know, is a world famous artist, and he is building a sculpture for us in the name of David Olawale, which will appear in the city centre in 2023. So the whole point of that is it's not a sculpture of David, it's a sculpture of a flower, actually, but it'll be 10 meters high, and it'll be a thing of great beauty. And as I say, our effort is to inspire a much more progressive and just and equal and socially inclusive city in Leeds, with a memorial to him which is awe-inspiring, but beautiful, as I say, to try and flip the narrative. So thank you very much for letting me say that to you. If you want to find out more, just Google or look on Twitter or Instagram, remember Olawale, all one word, and you'll come to our website and you'll come to our various social media, and you can find out anything more that you'd like. And just one final note is that we've produced one anthology of poetry and short stories and other forms of writing in the name of David Olawale, and we're just about to produce a second one, and we've asked Arkbound for permission to reprint some of David Onamade's work in that, and it would be great to have some sort of introduction from one of you. I was very struck by what Roxana said, actually, but if we could get some sort of contextual statement to go with one or two of David's poems, we'd be really grateful.
Oh, lovely. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, that really sounds amazing. I'll make sure I don't put it up, actually. And so Val, would you like to say a few words now?
Yes, the thing is, we actually met David, and it was Arkbound, it was Steve and me who reached out to him while he was still homeless and living in the sort of Bath era in a tent. And we noticed how bad it really was, because we had the lockdown as well, and he needed to go online actually for some Zoom meeting, and there was no place for him. Like, libraries were closed, everything was closed. So in the end, I invited him to come home to my own house, and I let him to use my laptop because it was a Saturday as well. Our office was closed. And this was actually how I met him, and he just spoke so proudly about his children, about all the work he has done in the past, and it's just incredible. I mean, he's just such an amazing person to meet, really, and I was really, really stunned how somebody like him actually was homeless in the end. He would come, and you wouldn't even imagine he was homeless, because he was always sort of making sure he makes a good impression. He was made sure he was like confident and everything. So then afterwards, we tried to get him rehoused through Emmaus. I invited everyone from Emmaus, but I don't think anybody arrived actually in Bristol. But we actually had to put our foot down, like Steve and me had to put our foot down, because he said, oh yes, because he's homeless, he might not get paid for the accommodation, because it's always so much hassle. That's something I really hate. I mean, if somebody is homeless and somebody is there out in the street, why do they need to be there? it's like can't they do anything quicker? So so we had to really put our foot down, make more and more applications, get him there. I mean, we even had to get a letter from some doctor saying you can't leave somebody out there in the street. It got worse and worse. I mean, in the winter with the lockdown, libraries were closed. He couldn't go even to charge up his phone anymore. They're living in a tent. Even the cafes were closed. He couldn't go in the cafe like have a cup of tea for a few hours and just warm up a bit. Everything was actually closed in lockdown, and then he was there. This was a sort of winter time. Yes, but we actually were able to get him rehoused, and our confederation said no matter what happens, if there are any sort of things which we don't get paid by getting a homeless person, we will do it. Like Arkbound is going to stand up for it. And then we got him the place in through Emmaus, and like it was incredible. Like I still have all his emails and all the sort of messages he sent me in the big. Oh, I'm still pinching myself. I can't believe it. You know, it's just like I've got my own room now. I've got a nice warm room. I can't believe it. You know, it's just some of this really happy type of things. And then I introduced him to our office, and we got to give him a job as our admin in our office at Arkbound Foundation, which was still up above Emmaus. And even though the office was in lockdown, because he was actually also through being getting a place through Emmaus, he was also had some jobs to do for them, so he was able to get in there. And the first thing we were there up in the sort of big room where we had like this shared incubator, and we were there together, and all the plants had dried out. Nobody was there anywhere, any desks and nothing like. And then it was me and David actually picking up watering cans and trying to revive all these plants. I said, oh, that's such a great type of new initial experience. Now we are sort of getting new plants to grow, and then he was absolutely wonderful as an admin. His first job was to do his book as well, so to finish the editing and the proofreading. But he also already worked on some tremendous brilliant projects at the same time, because he was going to pick up on the project for the Somali project, which he wanted to do. And he said he knows so many Somali people, because in the 90s, he was there, and he was there when all the Somali refugees came actually from Africa, and he was able to rehouse them. It was like he just did so much. He contributed so much to equalities. He contributed so much practical things to everything, and so it's really brilliant. And I mean, I still don't understand how somebody could be left out homeless after he had actually such an important job in like 20-30 years, being a racial equality officer, and then also like equality representative himself. I mean, I used to be a neighborhood equality rep in Bristol, and this is something which really linked me up as well. And so I just couldn't believe it. And then the thing was, I had a really happy type of time for a couple of months. Sadly, around February, then he actually got notices that he had to be submitted to hospital for some problems. And then around March, he was submitted to Southmead Hospital. I couldn't visit him, even though I'm very close to there. I couldn't even talk to him over the phone anymore. It was a complete lockdown. When I phoned the reception, they said, oh, why are you phoning me? I said, yes, but I'm his employer. And they said, no, he can't talk. And in the end, it was very, very sad just to hear that he passed away just about the time when we sent him the books and the get well card. Like, his book was published. I don't know if he still received it, but I hope he still received the book and or the get well cards. We sent him there. but it was just because of the full lockdown, we were not able to visit him at all. Yeah, so this is, I mean, you can ask more questions later on, but this is some of the memories I've got, and it really, really sad. I mean, it still strikes me how this actually could have happened to somebody who contributed so much to our equality and to Bristol and our Avon and like the whole country really. And and also I'm interested, I want to say, because I know that Eddie is here and his family is here as well. He kept on saying how proud he is of his family, and he said how proud he is of Eddie, his son. He's such a brilliant person, and said another couple of years maybe then my children will be able to be looking after me. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm really, really sad. I mean, that the other couple of years didn't happen anymore, and I was really, really, really saddened by it. I mean, I have been homeless myself, but so I really associate with it. I even had to make a Windrush application myself last year, but I'm not going to go into more. I mean, I've talked a lot already, but so if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them later.
Well, thank you, Val.
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much actually for that. Sorry, I'm cutting you off quickly, but because Femi wants to talk as well. I think Femi had the hand up.
I thought she was here, but it seems.
Oh, maybe not.
Coming in from Lagos in Nigeria, and he's a journalist.
Oh, okay.
Story. So I don't know what's happened. Could be reception.
Yeah, it could be reception. I mean, yeah, I'll make sure that this is emailed to everyone anyway. This whole discussion. So so Femi will receive it as well. But is there anyone else who wants to talk now? Just to, to give any more statements on David or anything else. If not, then everyone's happy to end here. But I think I'll.
Could I just say that we were looking at, we got Trinity Centre hired on the, I think it's the 30th of June, with the idea of recordings for people perhaps that are not here, that either want to send something on WhatsApp or just come in and record something. Rob, you said you'd help with that. Yeah,
I can be there as well, top with that.
Yeah, because there's obviously other people that knew him through race relations. I think he did know a lot of people.
Yeah,
well, yeah. I get actually, and for some people, they're only just now hearing that he's died, so they're still processing where they're at really with that. Yeah, so that's the 30th of June at Trinity.
The Trinity, yeah. Wait, have you got a link for that as well? Like a link for the event or anything?
I don't think we were looking at it just as a drop by. Yeah,
okay.
I suppose we could
a physical event.
Sorry?
It's a physical event.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the idea is that there is a room that's been hired at Trinity that is available for people to create legacy around David, to record thoughts, to read poems. I think it'd be obviously a lovely thing for his family, but also a resource for us, in the different fields in which we're working. And potentially that it might be good for, a future radio broadcast. There'll be material that could contribute to a discussion programme around the issues and, of course, the legacy of David's wonderful and generous life.
Actually, sorry, Jonathan, I also misunderstood you. I guess a link for promotion is also possible for a physical event. So I didn't mean to.
Yeah, well, that's what I.
The idea of a link. I just thought, actually, Roz, you could maybe pass that on to Jonathan, and if there's
and then I can disseminate it around.
Sorry, what was that, Rob?
Maybe you could send the information about the event to Jonathan.
Yeah,
and maybe let anybody else know who was
interested in this event. And just come. Yeah.
And it could be another event, Bright.
Could be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can. I mean, if you guys
Well,
would like, I
it's
can
more
maybe
like a
do
drop
an
in,
Eventbrite.
really, isn't it? We did also talk about possibly having some copies of Sororities and Blood that people can buy there. Is that possible for the publisher to leave?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that can be.
You know, if they don't sell,
I'm pretty
they
sure that can
obviously have to
be
back.
sorted. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you could
I'm
sort
sure
of come by and share some thoughts and
Mm.
leave with a copy of his book. That seems like, you know.
Yeah. I'm definitely sure that can be arranged.
Mm.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of copies of it at the office, so we can. Yeah, we can bring those in on the day. I can bring those in anyway, personally. Try and sort that out.
Might also be worth setting something up virtual. Going back to your link again, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Might actually be worth saying some way that people can just tap in virtually as well, to the physical event. But anyway, we can talk about
Yeah,
it.
that'd be
Yeah.
very
talk
good.
about people doing little WhatsApps that they could.
Yeah. I'll try and do one of those.
Yeah. Well,
With that.
well, I think you all have my email. So if you want to email me about starting an Eventbrite possibly, and then I can create an Eventbrite for maybe doing it online as well as in person, and maybe just again like the word out as well through Arkbound.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Cool.
We did also talk about the nights of July, you know, just having something outdoors. I did suggest to go wild only because it's around the corner to me, but it is really, really nice. It's a wildlife place with awnings and hideaways so that people can just share and have a picnic and, you know, so that's a night of July, it's 2 to 4.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm very, very sorry not to be able to be at that, because it's literally like a potluck supper where we all get together and commemorate, you know, talk about David, tell anecdotes, share work.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fabulous thing. So that was 2 to 4, wasn't it, on the 9th?
Yeah, in July.
9th of July.
And you're up in Newcastle
Castle Park. In Castle Park.
There's not a
We're
silly
hoping-
wilder. Only because they got toilets. They're easy. They've got everything.
Are you saying it's not Castle Park? You're saying it's
Go Wilder suggesting.
Should we save
Go
this
Wilder.
for some organization meeting? And call
Sorry?
it, should we save this for some sort of organizing meeting?
Yeah.
This one to a halt.
Yeah,
Everyone's welcome.
But if you send me the details of all of that, and I'll make sure to get it through for Arkbound as well.
Yeah.
Especially for the one on the 30th, I'll make sure to get that sorted.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Max has put something in the chat, really.
Yeah.
We want to know more about David Olawule. Yeah, the website is rememberolawule.org.
Sounds good. Thank you, Max.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for everyone for coming.
Yeah,
I hope you found like some peace through this, and thank you so much for attending. Oh, it's all good. Honestly, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Very much, everybody. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. By the way, I've got the recording, so I'm going to send it to like everyone's emails once it's saved. So
yeah.
I'll send everyone the recording, and also I'll upload it to YouTube on Arkbound for Arkbound, and
okay, brilliant.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Exactly 1 hour. Thank you.